Hi, everyone. I'm Robina Riccitiello, and I'm your host today for today's UCLA Depression Grand Challenge Facebook Live event, where we'll be talking to Glenn Close. Thank you all for joining. This is a great time if you want to get your friends involved to share it on your own Facebook page and let everybody else know this is going on. As you're all jumping on, I'm going to tell you why I'm here. Like many of you who've just signed on, I've dealt with depression in my family too. I have family members who suffer from depression and anxiety and addiction. It was a real shock to me. I thought you could solve any problem with hard work and a good attitude. But that didn't work when I was trying to help my nephew and niece with their depression and addiction problems. I sat there Googling in the middle of the night and wondering, trying to find out what to do as I was sitting in hospital emergency rooms, and realized there just isn't the kind of information out there or the kind of solutions that we need. And that's what brought me to UCLA's Depression Grand Challenge and being here today to talk to Glenn Close. I'm going to introduce you to Glenn Close, although she doesn't really need any introduction. She's one of the best actresses of her generation. She's got 3 Tony Awards, 3 Emmys, 2 Golden Globes, 6 Academy Award nominations, and even a Grammy nomination. Glenn and her sister have done some of the most important work, founding a groundbreaking group called Bring Change to Mind that's fighting to eliminate the stigma and discrimination that people with mental health illness face. And for her work, UCLA has named Glenn a depression hero, and we thank you, Glenn. Glenn, say hello to our viewers and tell us, let them know what brought you to this conversation about depression and mental health illness.
Well, hi everyone. It's really great to be with you, and thank you for jumping on for this. It's kind of exciting. I'm here basically because of my sister Jessie, and she came to me one day. We were visiting my parents, and she said, "I can't stop thinking about killing myself. I need help." And the thing that happened in our family actually was that her son, Calen, who also speaks very openly about his illness, was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder before this happened. So we were kind of introduced to mental health issues through Calen, but had no vocabulary for it. And so my mom and I were able to help Jess get help, and she was ultimately sadly, she was already 50 years old, but she was properly diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I just didn't know anything about it. I was having my career. She had a totally different life. We didn't have as much texting as they're going on today, and not as much computer communication. So I honestly didn't know what was going on in her life. And when we would have family gatherings, you know, it was very easy for her to cover up. But when all this happened, we started educating ourselves as a family. And Calen and Jessie have been absolutely incredible in learning about their illnesses and learning how to manage their illnesses. And for me, it's a family affair. We learned through the process, you know, as we were getting a new vocabulary, that actually in our family, we knew this, but we've had suicide, we have much depression, a lot of alcohol addiction, but no one ever talked about it. And I think Jessie suffered for that. And so we simply wanted to start an organization that helped empower people to start talking about what they were going through, and through that to just hopefully make it a normal thing to talk about without any stigma or shame.
Great. And thank you for everyone who's just signed on. We really appreciate it, and welcome to the Facebook Live event. Glenn, can you talk about that stigma and what you've done to try to help people be able to bring up that they're suffering from a mental health illness and get the kind of acceptance and understanding that they should be able to get?
I think we have a very vital organization in Bring Change to Mind. We are significantly in the high schools in Northern and Southern California. We'll have about 22,000 students in our clubs in high schools. I think people need to feel that they're safe in talking about what they're afraid about and what they're going through. And also it's wonderful to have a place where you can bring a friend who you think is suffering and is too afraid to talk about it. But for me, the main thing is what I feel very strongly, and it's something I'm very aware of as an actress, that we thrive on connection. Human beings cannot exist without connection. And what happens with stigma is that someone is isolated or made to feel shame, and they become disconnected. And that can be incredibly dangerous, and it can lead to many, many things, depression, suicide, anxiety. So the simplest part of our message is, join us, join our community, learn all the different tools there are to combat stigma, and start hopefully changing our culture.
Yeah, I've really found that when I tell people what I'm working on, I get so much empathy. And I know everybody out there, everybody who's watching right now, has dealt with depression, or a friend or a relative who's had depression. And when you open up about it, you just get this outpouring of support. And I can only imagine, what that must mean for someone who finally takes the step to say, whoa, I've got some trouble, I've got some problems, and I could use your help. I love the PSA that you guys did set in the football bar, where the woman is saying, yeah, my team's got trouble. And the guy goes, I'm here to help you. Tell us a little bit more about the public service announcements that you've done, and how you've happened to have chosen the subjects that you've done.
Well, I first thought, because that I'm in the entertainment business, that one of my contributions would to be to help make these PSAs. I know that the world is not going to be changed by a PSA, but I think a really good, well thought out PSA can help kind of plow the field for new ideas and can get people thinking. And so our first PSA was in Grand Central Station, because we wanted to be at the crossroads, knowing that 1 in 4 people who walked through that station during the time that we were making our PSA were dealing with some sort of mental health issue. So it was a remarkable day. And for us, certainly as my family, my daughter was in it, my nephew, my sister took part in it. And that it was a real act of courage, because people they wore their T-shirts that had their illness written on it. And that took a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage to be in a huge place like Grand Central Station and have bipolar on your T-shirt, or, schizophrenia on your T-shirt. And so I really, really, thinking back on that momentous day, and Ron Howard, who I called up, a cold call, and said, would you possibly direct this? He was directing it. And they got through it, and really was for us a significant step as a family to be able to talk as a family and openly about what we all been through.
Yeah. And one of the people who was in that commercial with you was Brandon Staglin, who has schizophrenia and helps run the Staglin Mental Health Music Festival, which has raised millions of dollars for mental health research.
And his dad, his mom was in it too.
Yeah. I've been told to tell you to like, share, comment, that's part of shattering the stigma. So get on there, everyone who's there. And I'm sorry, I don't have the list of who's signed on, or I would recognize you all right now. But thank you all for being here. Just as you're talking about the key to, diving into depression and understanding it, I just want to mention that the UCLA Depression Challenge, Grand Challenge, is doing exactly that. They're going to be studying 100,000 people, trying to do genetic analysis and also environmental factors. The size of that study in itself is just staggering. I mean, a 6,000 person study is huge and groundbreaking, but a 100,000 person study with that kind of detail is going to really help unlock a lot of the secrets of depression and really help staggering numbers of people. What we're pretty sure about is that UCLA is going to be able to help people during the study. It's not like we have to wait 20 years and say, let's do some analysis. But no, they're really going to be working during the study and getting treatments to people. And that's actually another thing I'm really excited about, is they're bringing depression treatments out of just the hospitals and the medical offices and moving them to some kind of innovative places like unemployment offices, where a heck of a lot of people need help. So Glenn, tell me a little bit more about what you've experienced as a part of coming out as an advocate for mental health.
Well, for example, people come up to me all the time, and I remember one time somebody came up to me in an airport and kind of whispered to me, "Thank you so much for what you're doing. And we have problems with mental health in my family." And I said, "Well, what is the problem? What exactly is the diagnosis?" And the person looked like I was so terrified for a minute. And then they actually said the words, and I saw this look of relief come over their face, because you know what? It was okay. And I also remember once being at a reception, and a woman came over to me and said something like, "My son was just diagnosed with bipolar." She literally went, "Oh," because it was so startling to her that she actually had said it out loud. And it was, to me, I've never forgotten that, because I know families now with people suffering, and they will not talk about it. They don't want the neighbors to think that they're, something strange. And so it's still very much out there. So I really believe in a grassroots movement coupled with scientific research, which is what we've always done. Are the clubs that we have in the high schools in northern Southern California now are backed up by a wonderful group of researchers at UC Berkeley. And they've been studying these clubs now for 2 years. And we will be able to know what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's really, really important, because it's really important. I don't want to ramble on, but it's kind of really important for funding, because mental health is historically at the bottom of the heap when it comes to funding. And that's another thing that we need to demand, that we get better funding from our government and from our states.
Yeah, and I know you went to the White House and talked to President Obama about that, and were instrumental in helping make that happen.
Well, actually, I went to the Congress. I didn't go to the White House. Jessie and Calen and I went to Congress, and we met with a lot of senators. They were and congressmen. And the thing that surprised me was how much they said, "Boy, it really, really makes a difference to have somebody come in and talk to us." So I'm hoping that these kids that we're working with, and the university kids that we're working with, that they will eventually be able to have delegations and go and actually talk about what they're doing to our Congress, people in Congress, because that's what will change things.
Fantastic. Let me thank Keith Anderson for commenting and sharing how Glenn's organization has given him the confidence and self-worth. Glenn, Jessie, and Nancy are honored to work with you.
Hi, Keith. That's a wonderful message. Thank you. Thank you.
Good. So talking about your experience in the airport, I'm sure that really people can really relate. I'm sure everyone here has had or many of us have had the situation of, well, like, how much do I tell? I mean, does this person really want to know how worried and falling apart I am about my nephew or my niece? I mean, do they really want to know the story? And my experience has been, if I know them well enough, I just go ahead and say it. And I get so much love and so much support when I do that. It's incredible. Oh, good. You were frozen for a moment there.
Yeah, resolving network. Okay, here we are. Are we back?
Yes. So people on our Facebook Live, tell us what you've done to help resolve a problem. If you've had to help a family member or yourself give us an example of the kinds of advocacy you've done for yourself or for a friend or family member, and let us talk about it. And also, we do have Glenn's here to answer your questions. So let me bring up one question from someone who submitted. Anna submitted ahead of time, and her question is, what should I do if someone who appears to have the symptoms of a mental disorder, but they don't want help because eventually they would be diagnosed and labeled in a certain way? And that is a tough question, but do you have a take on that, Glenn?
I have found that is probably the toughest situation to be in, because it's very hard to force somebody to get help. And I'm not sure that I have a definitive answer about it. I think what's really, really wonderful is that she has been sensitive to a change in behavior, perhaps, of this friend, because that's different from how she was before, and that she's monitoring it, and hopefully has talked to her about it. And what would you say, Robina, to that? It's a very difficult situation, but the fact that she's paying attention, and trying to help this person, I think is a huge, huge step. And maybe you can find other people that are dealing with the same thing, and somehow you can all get together and try to talk about it, so it doesn't become stigmatized. So it is okay.
Exactly. And just acknowledging that you're suffering, that you're suffering isn't the same as broadcasting it to the world. You don't have to take that step and say, I am super depressed. But acknowledging it with your doctor or with a friend and then getting help is certainly one way of taking a step.
I mean, the thing that I find incredibly hopeful and real is that my nephew and my sister have wonderful, fulfilled lives. And yes, it was a difficult journey. Yes, they had to have different, kind of meds to be balanced. And also talk therapy has been incredibly helpful. But they are vital, kind of fulfilled people. And so it's possible to have a life. I think sometimes people don't realize that it's a chronic illness. And there's incredible research being done about it, but there's also right now things that can really help you, make you feel better. And if you stick to it, it's possible to have a wonderful life.
Exactly. Talking about depression, it affects more than 350,000 people worldwide. And the sad thing is, so often it's not diagnosed for years and years and years. Like you talk about your sister with the bipolar disorder. It's just alarming and upsetting that people feel so bad for so long without getting help. And hopefully the work that you're doing and the work that UCLA is doing, the work that UCLA is doing is going to make a difference. Let me correct myself. I think I said 350,000, 350 million people worldwide. Right. Thank you to my fact checker. But what I wanted to say also is that at the college campuses where we're sending our kids, something like 40% of the kids suffer from depression and anxiety. And I think there was a statistic that 30% of the college students that were surveyed in one survey reported feeling so depressed it was difficult to function at some point over the past year. This is really a problem for people of all ages, but we're talking about UCLA. So let me just tell you one thing that UCLA has started, which is, well, a couple things. They're screening people online with a survey that changes depending on what answers you give. And they've already found several kids who were suicidal and were able to intervene just through this pretty basic tool. And the other thing they're doing at UCLA, which is great and can be a model for other schools, is using some peer counseling, because it's hard to have enough doctors to talk to every single person who's suffering from depression or anxiety. So for the less severe cases, the borderline cases, they're having young people talk to each other and support each other. And they're finding that that works really well. So yeah, I'm so excited about. I'm so excited about what you're doing with the kids in the high schools in California. And are you expecting to expand that elsewhere?
Absolutely. It's a pilot project. And you know, when we have all the data and we have, you know, enough to present, yeah, it has already spread. It started near San Francisco, and it's going to be 2,200 students. So we also have a program at another pilot program at Indiana University. One of our scientific advisors is there. She's a fantastic sociology professor, Bernice Pesca-Solido. And I went once there to visit, and she was giving a class about stigma. And she had given her students, they were freshmen, she had given her students the task of creating what is the word? No, creating some, I can't think of the word. All right, here I'm live and I'm going blank. Creating anyway, something that all the
project.
Yeah, creating a project, something that they could, that then we judged to see which ones were we thought would be most effective, and then they were experimented with on the campus. It was about peer-to-peer, about depression, about anxiety, and so that also is scientifically based. And I'll be going back there in October and judging another group, and it's really fun stuff. I mean, one of the you know, they have intramural sports, and one of the things was kick stigma in the balls, and it was a kickball tournament. You know,
awesome.
And they came up with such incredible ideas. I said, this should be something that we develop, you know, peer to peer, that we can then have a toolbox that is scientifically real, and that's something we also can give to other colleges and universities.
Glenn, can you talk a little bit about how it's my impression that in your situation, you were able to help your nephew and your sister because you had the resources to be able to find them the best treatments. And a lot of people don't have that. What do you advise people when they're just starting out on this journey, or maybe they're deep into it? How do you get the kind of help you need for your family?
I would first of all go to an organization like NAMI. They're very grassroots. They're in many communities, and it's a wonderful place to go for the first steps. Also, something like the UCLA Grand Challenge. I mean, and also go on to Bring Change to Mind and see, because it's all about people's stories. And the thing that's incredibly effective with mental health is to hear the story of someone else. How did they deal with it? What have they done? How did their family react? How did their friends react? What would you do if you were in their shoes? And it's very, very helpful. And I think it can also give you courage, you know, to seek help. But I think one of the things that really has to be fixed in this country is to have more people knowing where to go to get help. It's a huge problem.
Yes. If you have just joined us, we're doing a Facebook Live with Glenn Close, UCLA's Depression Hero. We're thrilled to have you with us, Glenn. Thank you so much. I have a question from Chris Omatic. I am a dually diagnosed bipolar and PTSD addict in long-term recovery. All throughout my 20+ years of online advocacy, the one thing that cannot be stressed enough is to be a living example of smashing the stereotypes. All of them. We are dynamic, intelligent, compassionate individuals who deserve better than to be marginalized as lost causes. We do recover. Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris. So valuable.
I love that comment, because I really believe in that. And I think the more courage that people can have to seek help, and to and for friends to be supportive and family to be supportive, they'll use somebody's great gifts and talents and what they can achieve and what they can give to the world. I mean, my sister is a wonderful writer and artist, and since she was diagnosed, she's written an incredible book called Resilience, all about her fight with bipolar disorder. So it really, it's just part of being a human being, this mental health and things that have to be adjusted and things that are to get out unbalanced is part of being a human being. And I embrace it. And I really, really salute that the guy who wrote that last message. It's
Agreed.
It's what it's all about.
We have about 5 more minutes, but I want to read another comment and question from one of our participants online. Catherine Blanc says, Glenn has really changed my life in many ways in a short period of time. I am so grateful. She has taught that it is okay to be fragile and seek help, among many other things. I honestly haven't got enough words for how much I look up to this woman. Thanks for everything, Glenn. I have one question which goes, what would be your advice for people going through a lot of stress and difficult life changes leading to depression?
Well, when I'm feeling really stressed, I try to actually be aware of the noise in my life and try to cut it out. I try to turn off my phone. I try to look at less television. I try to find a good book. I try to listen to music that will soothe my soul. And also, it really helps me. I have to admit that I don't do it regularly. I wish I said I did. But to stay quiet and kind of meditate, I do have a mantra and I do TM. I find it incredibly helpful whenever I can just calm my mind enough to actually do it. But there are things you can do. There's so much noise in the world now. There's so many things coming at us. So much. It is so stressful, and that's some of the things that I do.
Fantastic. And also adding to that, if you do feel yourself getting into a depression, seeing a therapist or a doctor is a really good step to take too.
Yeah.
There is so much love for Glenn out there. I'm not seeing the comments, but my niece Heather is monitoring them, and she said there's so much love coming in on this Facebook Live. So thank you so much, Glenn. This is amazing. I think we have time for, actually, I think we don't have time for this last question. Too bad, because it was, what movies do you think do justice at representing mental health issues? Do you want to give that a 1 minute?
I don't know. I have to admit, I don't know if I have that list. I think I think A Beautiful Mind, I think, was wonderful. I think the fact that let's see, here I am. I don't Claire Danes, that wonderful TV
in Homeland.
Homeland. Yeah, you have somebody who basically is the star of a show and she's suffering from bipolar disorder. I think that the more and more we can have stories that people happen to be dealing with these issues and still, having a life and being effective, I think that's really, really important. So I'm sorry that I don't have my list. I probably should make it, but I think it's been hard because it's very easy to make somebody with a mental health issue the bad guy. I've lived through it people have said that with Fatal Attraction, that woman could have had a diagnosis. And she's considered one of the biggest villainesses of the last, century or so. And,
yeah.
I don't think that's totally fair, but how you tell a story is very important. I could have had something in my head, but you have to have a script that makes something more evident.
Yeah. All right, we're going to be wrapping up in a minute, but I just want to encourage everyone who's out there to really share your story and help shift the culture. So share it on this Facebook page or share it on your own Facebook page, or just tell one person and talk about what that means to you and thank them for listening and tell them they're a part of the solution by listening and being supportive. So we do have to wrap up. I want to just thank you so much, Glenn. I want to thank all of you for tuning in, and thank you so much, Glenn, for being here. And to wrap up, can you give us sort of a vision for what you hope for the future?
Oh, I just want to quickly say how deeply honored I am to be considered a depression hero. I humbly, it's just my family, really. I wouldn't be here without Jessie and Calen in my family. It's because of them. What I hope for the future, I hope for the future that mental illness is considered just a chronic illness, and that it's funded enough for people to get help, and that people understand that it's part of being a human being, and part of our remarkable brains. It just seems to me logical that it's, we haven't even, our brain is like outer space. It's infinite. And so these things can happen. And I think we need compassion, and we need to embrace it, and we need to make sure that the wonderful energy and talents of people who are suffering with mental illness become part of us, part of our society.
Very well said. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you. Please, everyone out there, get on the Bring Change to Mind Facebook page and check out their website and like it and share it. And same with the Depression Grand Challenge, with the UCLA Grand Challenges. Please get on those pages, share them with people who might benefit from learning about what's going on out there, because there's a lot of really good research, and there's a lot of people trying to make a difference.
There are.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, and thank you all of you.
Honor. Thank you.